It's funny, after doing more than 2,000 stories at ABC, my previous job, it's ironic that one of the reports I'm best known for is one I didn't do. It was the attempt by 2020 to report on the facts and circumstances surrounding the death of Marilyn Monroe. Now, you may recall that that story was killed by ABC News management. In any case, regardless of how Marilyn died, that story was about, her death. Regardless of how she died, it's an incredible tribute to our fascination with Marilyn Monroe that 24 years after her death, we are still very much interested in her.
President, the late Marilyn Monroe.
She was the sex goddess of her time, friend and possibly lover of a president.
Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you.
American royalty, sensual, vulnerable, the very essence of the classic dumb blonde. Well, maybe she was, maybe she wasn't so dumb, but she could play the role with an unmatched sense of humor and glamour. In the early years of her career, it was all upbeat, from the fighting fields of Korea to the sidewalks of Hollywood. She married famous men, like Baseball's Joltin' Joe DiMaggio, then changing pace, writer Arthur Miller. Near the end, her life was marred by multiple abortions, divorce, and drug problems. Marilyn was even institutionalized for a time after an overdose suicide attempt. Lost to us now, we have preserved her famous face as it was during life. Had she lived, Marilyn Monroe would be 60.
Beginning with that shocking fact that Marilyn would have been 60 this year, Gloria Steinem has written a new book about Marilyn. In a New York interview, I began by asking Gloria if Marilyn wasn't even more famous now than she was during her life.
Absolutely. No, that's the irony, I think, of a life foreshortened. Our imaginations really are compelled to carry it on. And we see that with Jack Kennedy, we see it with James Dean, we see it with other people. But I think it's especially true of Marilyn.
Would Marilyn have participated in the women's movement, or would she have been left behind by it had she lived?
I think that Marilyn would have felt supported by the women's movement because we're all kind of saying the same things. She kept saying, and at the end of her very last interview, she pled with the reporter, please don't make me a joke. Please print what I really believe, that the world needs brotherhood. And she was trying to say serious things. And of course, the reporter didn't use that. And she wanted desperately to be a serious actress, yet she was always put in dumb blonde roles. And she railed against that, too. So there were so many ways in which her experience was an exaggeration of women's experience. That is, being identified totally by your outside instead of by what's in your head and what's in your heart.
Hollywood has this syndrome, the casting couch, sleeping your way to the top. Do you think Marilyn was used by producers? Or did she use her sex to get what she wanted?
Listen, if women could have slept their way to power, there would have been a lot more of us on top by now. I mean, the truth is that you have to do it just to get to the entry level. So, I mean, she was doing it to be able to work, but not instead of working.
You quote her as saying she spent a lot of time on her knees, indicating the kind of sexual behavior she had to engage in to get the role she wanted. Tell me about that.
It's always especially revealing to me that I think, to women and men in general, that aging Hollywood executives, seem to demand a certain kind of oral sex because it's totally divorced from any idea of, human contact or, I don't know, caring about the person or certainly any pleasure on the part of the woman.
Was Marilyn Monroe, in essence, doomed to a premature death by her reliance, her total reliance on sex and beauty?
I would put it another way. I would say, are all women either doomed or do we have our lives foreshortened by society's emphasis on sex and beauty as women's primary worth? She was just an exaggerated version of what happens to all of us. When women are thought to be less worthwhile as we get older. It's why women get more radical with age and men get more conservative. We lose power as we get older and men gain power.
How do women who aren't Marilyn Monroe deal with the aging process?
Well, Marilyn was a 50s person, and she died before she got any help. and Jane Fonda and Cecily Tyson and, you know, all the people who are Shirley MacLaine now have help. Shelley Winters, for instance, who's a contemporary, had some of the same dumb blonde roles, and yet she has become a wonderful character actress, and she is the artistic director of the Actors Studio and doing all kinds of it. She and Marilyn were roommates together as starlets. So, you know, there's a point of comparison. But you can't do it by yourself. And Marilyn was trying to do it all alone, and without even any idea that, that she was right and society was wrong.
So what lesson do women in the audience today draw from the speculation of Marilyn Monroe at 60?
Well, I think that women can try to honor the real person inside of ourselves and try to understand that if we become dependent on our externals too much, then we, in a real sense, have allowed ourselves to self-destruct or cooperated with the system that says we must self-destruct. And I hope that men in the audience will understand that if they demand dependent women, they will get a child who is insatiable in the need for nurturing. That's, I mean, it wasn't easy for Marilyn's husbands or lovers either. And if they demand unconditional worship, they will get lies. So if we have to kind of honor each other as unique people, whole people, or we will punish ourselves.
And both end up losing.
And both end up losing, right?